It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA,
Agent Ether,
and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out all of our other wonderful links in the description on Linktree. This week's episode, the Dodleston Messages.
I love this story, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Because I love ghosts. I love time slips and stuff. And it's a confusing mess of a sort, this story, but it's pretty interesting. Really freaking interesting.
All right, well, let's get to it, everybody. Oh, wait. Before we get to it also, I just want to shout out a new Patreon subscriber. Who do we got here? We have Stephen Barton is now a Patreon subscriber. So huge thanks to you, Stephen Barton. And we might as well shout out everybody else while we're at it. We don't have a ton of people yet, so what are you doing, guys? Come on, get on it. So we have Sarah Jorgensen, Dick Cheese McGee, Virginia Mailman, Ozzy Meemaw, Day One Comics, Rune Ali Christensen, and Diamond. You guys are friggin' awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the show. It really helps us out, gets us a budget so we can get, better equipment and update our software and all kinds of exciting stuff that is somewhat expensive to do. All right, well, that's my Patreon little thing, chingadera, I guess. So let's get to it. Well, so it sounds like you're pretty excited about this one, Agent ETA. So you can go ahead and lead if you'd like, if you want to start us off here.
Well, hell, I mean, so the Dodleston Messages kind of focuses around this computer that this guy Ken Webster had. He was a teacher, and in 1984, he had this BBC Model B micro.
Wait, yeah, he had a BBC micro. Isn't that sort of like an oxymoron? Just saying.
Well, yeah, because the computer was actually sizable. It wasn't small in any way, shape, or form.
Back then, though, those things were just glorified typewriters, right? For the most part.
It was a fully functioning computer.
Floppy disks and all.
Yes, floppy disks, yeah.
Yeah, but it was very modular also in its construction, too. And one of the reasons why I mentioned that is because it had this particular computer had a chip called Edward in it. And that's the word processor, like type of a program that would be modularly installed into this computer, and it's the program that this fellow Ken Webster, his girlfriend Debbie, and also Nicola, is it Baguli, that lived with him as well in this little cottage. Yeah. That's where the story starts. So from what I understand, the story kind of starts with a somewhat of like a kind of a ghost story, I guess you could say. They had heard like some, footsteps and stuff in the house, and they were having some mild ghost experiences, I guess you could say. And this cottage was kind of in a little bit of disrepair when this guy Ken Webster moved into it, and so he was doing some upgrades to the house and stuff like that. And there's an initial story where he was repainting the inside of the kitchen. And before he had done that, there was what he claimed to be like footsteps on the walls. It looked like footsteps, but the weird thing about it was these footsteps had 6 toes.
Yes.
So, I mean,
and I read there were tiny footprints as well. Like, I don't know what that means, but.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, because I found different descriptions of this, you know what I mean? So I'm not sure which one to believe, to be honest, because it's been written, this story has been recounted. It's like a game of telephone in some ways, Yes. I mean, there's a lot of descriptions by the people directly involved in the case, and that's what I would go off of, obviously, right? It should be more reliable as far as a testimony. But so they had been experiencing some like ghost-like interactions and stuff, and like they hear footsteps and stuff at night and stuff like that. And so yeah, he was remodeling the kitchen, and there was feet print on the wall. And so they painted over it. The first coat, I don't know if it's the first or second coat, whatever they did, but the first time they painted it, the footprints came back. And then they were like, well, that's weird. They didn't really chalk it up to a whole lot. Like they weren't really freaked out about it. But he put another paint coat over, and then I guess they didn't reappear after that. So they kind of were just like, all right, well, that was weird, but whatever. You know what I mean? And
yeah, kind of just dismissed it.
Yeah. And so, this BBC microcomputer, he had borrowed it from the school that he worked at, and I guess they had been given, a grant from the government and been provided these computers because of a program that they had in their government at the time. Who was it? Was it? What was her name? Margaret Thatcher? Was that? Am I mistaken here?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's right.
All right. Well, anyways, so I didn't really put that down in my notes. I was just kind of farting it out of my brain. But so yeah, there was a strong push for these computers being available in schools and stuff at the time. So luckily, the school that he worked at had actually an abundance of these computers, and so he was able to, rent one, I guess, or just like take it out of to his home to use as a word processor, basically. And he had, him and the people he lived with, Debbie and Nick. Obviously, the guy Nick, his name is Nicola, but everybody called him Nick, from what I understand. So, yeah, they were using it for other projects that they had, been interested in stuff, and their free time. And they, long story short, I guess, initially, they had left the computer on and had received a message from somebody who seemed to lived on the same plot of land, not in the house, because the house hadn't been built at the time in which this individual that was contacting them, the house wasn't in existence. But the foundations, it seems, the foundations for the original house was still there. These red bricks, right? They were like red bricks. They're like, I don't know if they were sandstone or something like that, but they seem to be the original foundation for the property.
Yeah.
It had been knocked down, and then obviously this cottage had been rebuilt on top of those foundations. And so this person, who, initially identified themselves as LW, ended up telling them that his name was Lucas Wayman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucas Wayman. And did you guys have the transcripts, like for the original messages?
I have some of them. There were a whole bunch of them.
I heard there were like 300 messages.
Yeah. Well, this was going on apparently for about 2 years. So I did not notate all of them, but I do have some of them. So let's see. So we have, in my notes, I have talking about, like you said, the poltergeist-like activity, right? With the footprints, the furniture being moved around or stacked in the corner of the room.
Yeah, didn't they stack them up? Like they found like chairs stacked up like 4 feet high?
Yeah.
They did, but that was a little bit later on. Like initially, they heard like I said, footprints and stuff, and like a lot of the poltergeist activity seemed to revolve around his girlfriend Debbie.
Yeah,
and even though he said that he had experienced some himself as well, but a lot of it revolved around her. And yeah, it was kind of that's kind of one of the things that really interests me the most, to be honest, because I love ghost stories. You know what I mean? I've never seen any. I've never had a crazy experience like that. Like I've had some questionable experiences where I couldn't really tell you if it was really ghosts or not, but. I love those stories though. It really sometimes when you hear a good story like that, it makes your hair stand up on your arms and stuff, gives you goosebumps. You're like, oh yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But initially like the footsteps and stuff like that, like the footprints on the wall. And then they also had like they would come into the kitchen and like there'd be like cups stacked up and stuff on the shelf.
Yes.
And then later on, that furniture, I remember Debbie, one of her testimonies, she explained that like it looked like the finger of a giant or something like that had just like swept everything off to the side. It wasn't just furniture too. It was like appliances and stuff that were in the kitchen. And like if I was to walk into a scene like that, I'd be pretty freaking spooked,
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. Yeah.
because she was coming to the house for that particular experience. She was coming to the house to feed the cats because at that point later on in the story, she didn't feel comfortable sleeping in the house anymore because she had some of these experiences. Like she even felt like a hand on her shoulder, like grabbing her shoulder and tugging at her hair a couple times and stuff. And like she noticed the cats in front of the house, like just like sitting there staring at her. And from what she said, usually when she'd come back to the house, the cats would be like swarming around her legs and stuff and be excited to see her, you know, but they weren't doing that. They were just sitting there like just staring at her. And like initially when she first like, you know, walked up to the front of the house, she's like, well, that's strange. And then she walked into the door, saw all that, like all the furniture, like moved over and stacked up on one side of the room. And she just backed up and was like, nope. Nope. Yeah. And I'm not going in there. You know?
The cats will be fine. They'll be fine for a day. You know, we'll let Ken get them. So what I found as far as, so the poltergeist activity started, you know, before the actual messages started arriving. But one night they went out with friends for a few hours. That would be Ken, Deb, and Nick. And while they were out, the computer was left on. They just kind of left it sitting there. This is back in the day before, I guess, electricity was an arm and a leg, and you could just do that sort of thing. You just leave your computer on, I guess.
Yeah.
And
no internet either, by the way.
Yeah, no internet. I mean, the internet was sort of in its beginning stages, but it was not like they might have a network set up like at the university, but you certainly couldn't connect to it from your home, you know, like that kind of a thing. So they went out and they came home. They found on the computer that had been borrowed, they found a message on the computer. It said, Ken, Deb, Nick, true are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow. But the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Get out your bricks. Pussycat, pussycat went to London to seek fame and fortune. Faith must not be lost, for this shall be your redeemer. I'm like, all right, well, what the hell does that mean? And the file was saved under the name of KDN. Now, apparently, this kind of a computer, it was hard to, like, you wouldn't really be able to program it to display this at a specific time. You know, like if you programmed it ahead of time, you knew Ken was going to borrow it and bring it home, and you also knew that he was going to go visit his friends in the pub at 8 p.m. I guess you would not be able to program this to display that at 8 p.m. on Friday night. I guess that you would actually have to physically type it on the computer while they were gone. Like somebody had to be there to type it. So they came home and this was there, and they're not sure how it got there. There was no signs of like forced entry. There's no signs that anybody broke into the house. There was nothing missing, nothing stolen. So it would be a pretty strange prank, not out of the question, but a strange prank for somebody to sneak into his house and type this bizarre poem and then leave, right? But they sort of dismissed it at first because they were like, that's weird, but okay, whatever. That's cool, you know, but they didn't really give it much thought, I guess. They forgot about it. And so I don't have an exact timeline of what computer Ken was borrowing and when, how many computers the school had and all that stuff. But you get the impression that the school had several computers. It probably was not a ton of computers. It was not like 50 or something like that, like what you might see nowadays in a classroom, because back then these computers were very expensive. So the school probably only had like 2 or 3 of them, maybe a little bit more, but it wouldn't have had a ton. So, I mean, it's not out of the question that somebody could have tampered with it somehow, right? But I believe these were also the type of computers where you had to run it off of a floppy drive. So I don't know. The logistics are sort of interesting to ponder, but it would be very difficult to do, I think. Maybe not impossible. I don't know. But yeah, so that was the first message. Did you want to continue on after that, ETA?
I don't have all the messages written down in my notes here. I kind of just...
I just mean just sort of like as far as the events go, but like the basic timeline. So we have the next event sort of happens in February of 1985. So we had the tail end of 84 was when the first message was received. And in February 1985, Ken borrowed another computer. The same thing happened this time. He was out of the house with hanging out with some friends or whatever. And when they got back, a message appeared on the computer. And this one says, I write on behalf of many. What strange words thou speak. Although I must confess that I hath also been ill-schooled. Sometimes methinks alterations are somewhat barful, for they break men asleep in mine bed. So this is like written in sort of an older version of the English language. So right is spelled Wryte, and there's, sometimes methinks it's Thymes, stuff like that. So thou art godly man who hath fanciful woman who dwell in mine home. I hath no want to affray, for only sith mine half. Whited antic has ripped a twain, mine bound hath I been wreathed a night. I don't know, I have no idea what that's talking about.
It's like reading Shakespeare or something where you have to look up every single word, and it has like historical and political context.
Yeah. I have seen many alterations, lastly change or charge house, and now home. 'Tis a fitting place with lights which devil maketh, and costly things that only mine friend Edmund Gray can afford, or the king himself. 'Twas a great crime to hath bribed mine house. So he's talking about the alterations that he's making to the house and how he's seeing, lights and things like this. But after this message, Ken and his friends started to take this a little bit more seriously. Maybe it wasn't some kind of prank. And also the whole time these messages are going on, throughout this whole narrative, in the backdrop, you have all of this poltergeist activity. We've sort of summarized it all for you at the beginning, but that's happening as well. So at this point, they're like, okay, maybe there is something to this after all. This is all a little bit weird. So they get the idea, or Ken gets the idea to write back to the message. He just types back onto the computer and responds to whoever's writing this. They don't really know. And they get a response. The writer says that he is from the year 1521, and the king is Henry VIII, who is 48, but the king would have been 30 years old at that time. So there's, or 30, or maybe 28 and 30, I don't know, whatever. There's like a little discrepancy on the age of the king. So the writer says,
yeah.
I
think he described him as like 46, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Which in that year he should have been 30.
Yeah, I think I don't think it was 48. I think that's a typo. I think I wrote that down wrong. But either which way, the message that was left on the computer gave the incorrect age for the king, which is sort of a strange detail.
Well, if he's supposed to be a farmer in the middle of a village in the middle of nowhere, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't know the age of the king either.
Yeah, that's possible. That's definitely possible. So the mysterious writer asks what they're doing in his house. Ken consulted at some point another teacher, by the way, Peter Tender, who determined that the language used was from the 16th century. So he said it would be period accurate. That's just a little side note there. Ken at some point asked the writer what the initials LW stood for, and they got the response that it stood for Lucas Wayneman. And they were able to research a lot of the stuff left in the messages. And for this particular one, they found that Lucas Wayneman owned the land during the 1540s. They did this, so this stuff is sort of out of order. Like, they didn't do that right away. It would have taken them a little bit of time to dig up that information, but they eventually determined that person did actually own that land in the past. Getting creepy yet, Aging Ether?
I don't know. I listened to this. They listened to this guy on YouTube who did like a short summary of the whole event. And I do remain a bit skeptical just because it's so fantastical, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a haunted word processor.
Well,
it almost sounds like a Stephen King story. That sounds like something Stephen King would write.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ghost stories that I've heard, that people recount that like the ghost was telling them to get out of their house. It's somebody that had died in the house or what have you, or lived on the property. So, I mean, this, and that doesn't necessarily support or, debunk or anything, you know what I mean? But it is a common thread that you do see in ghost stories where, the ghost is not necessarily, they don't know that they're dead and they think that they're still living in their house. Maybe they're in purgatory, whatever it is, who knows? But I mean, that's a common thing you see in ghost stories. So it doesn't surprise me that's in this story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Just checking something here. Okay. So they tested the knowledge of the guy or the digital intruder or whoever it was writing these messages, and they sort of answered or asked questions of him to try to see if they'll make mistakes or errors in the answers. And at some point, Lucas starts asking them questions, sort of like testing them. So it kind of goes back and forth like that. And at some point, Debbie began to have vivid dreams of traveling back in time and meeting with Lucas. Lucas communicates these meetings in his messages. So she would have a dream, travel back in time and like have a conversation with him or whatever. And then on the next message, he would mention that dream and what they spoke about in the dream. So it's sort of like this
telepathic
time,
sort of time
traveling
connection.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and she even made sketches about something like what she thought he looked like, or from like what she remembered from the dream. And some of those sketches are actually, I don't know if you've seen those pictures, but they're actually pretty good. Like she must have been a decent artist, like. Yeah, it was pretty detailed, as far as a simple sketch goes. But
yeah, for sure. But so I'm just looking at the Discord chat right now. Diamond says I put the recipe for the cookies on there. Diamond says, hey, those look dope. I'm like, hey, yeah, they're pretty good. And Byron, what's up, Byron? He says, those cookies look delicious. All right. So one of the next details that I found interesting was they were asking Lucas, like, how are you talking to us or whatever? And Lucas said that he is communicating to them with a box of light or a box of lights. And it sounds like he's describing a computer. He just doesn't use that word for it because they don't know what computers are back then. So Ken at some point tells Lucas that he was living in 1985, and then the response he got was, "You said your time be 1985. Me thought you were also from 2109. Your friend whom didst bring." Oh, you want to go ahead and grab that, Agent Ether? She's got her 9 o'clock alarm on to go ahead and feed the cryptids. I guess while she's doing that, I'll do our next advertisement. All right, let's get back to the show. Hopefully Agent Ether gets back pretty soon. I need to start writing out these advertisements because they're not very good. Uh-oh. Oh no, she got another cookie. Agent Ether got another cookie. All right, I'll start at the beginning of that again. So Ken told Lucas that he was coming from 1985, and Lucas sent him this response, basically saying, "You said your time is 1985. I thought you were from 2109, like your friend whom did bring me the box of lights." Is basically, so I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what it says. Like, for example, didst bringa leams boista prey, I guess means box of lights. I don't know. I'm not sure how, but that's what I found online, and the internet never lies. So,
of course,
I guess somebody brought a box of lights to Lucas, and that person was named One and had green skin. It was basically a green skin time traveler who brought a computer back to the 1500s for some strange reason, so that this person could communicate to the future. So then Ken said, well, why don't we try to talk to the person from 2109? And to his surprise, or maybe not, he got a response. And here is that response. Ken, Deb, Peter. So I guess at this point, Peter's another friend that had been brought in. I'm not sure exactly when, but he was in on the whole thing. We are sorry.
Yeah, I think he was another school teacher, right? He was an English teacher. I guess he knew a little bit of something about Old English in the 16th century.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, that might be that guy, yeah. We are sorry that we can give you only two choices. One, that you either have your predicament explained in such a non-rhyme way that you may have instant understanding, but cause what should not be to happen. Or two, try to understand that you three have a purpose that shall in your lifetime change the face of history. We, 2109, must not affect your thoughts directly, but give you some sort of guidance that will allow room for your own destiny. All we can say is that we are all part of the same God, whatever it is. And let's see. Yeah, so that was the message from the future.
I find like that message from 2109 a little suspect because if they didn't want to necessarily affect the future, then why would they have gone farther back and given Lucas this light box, the computer? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he also, I know that some of the responses he had made, Lucas describes that he doesn't basically they found out that he's not typing anything in, he's just speaking to the computer or what have you. So it sounds like. Yeah, he has like some kind of like a verbal dictation program or something like that, on the computer where it's he's speaking into it and he's not typing, That
would make sense because the letters would also look different. And I think they wrote in script. Yeah. They wrote in script, so it would look a lot different.
Yeah. A little closer to your microphone, please, Agent Ether. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's interesting because it's sort of, did they have text-to-speech software back then? I'm not sure. So it's sort of an interesting detail that kind of makes you think, well, maybe this is all legit if they're describing something that doesn't actually exist yet. On the other hand, science fiction stories have been coming up with stuff for a long, long time that ended up eventually being invented later on.
Especially Jules Verne stories like the submarine and Gone to the Moon. Man, that guy was fantastical.
Yeah, and that was like, what, 1800s or something?
Yes, yeah. Amazing stories.
Long time ago. So people did have these ideas kicking around, even though they may not have necessarily been invented yet. I'm not sure specifically about text-to-speech, but I know that there's, sci-fi had been running very strong for very long, with authors like Heinlein and Asimov and all kinds of stuff that, they were predicting the future essentially in a lot of different ways. But all right, so I have another quote from the future here, and it sort of suggests that hints that maybe it's all just an experiment. I don't know, but here it is. It is better to have no knowledge at all than to have a distorted view of the truth because of your lack of understanding. We 2109 are not without compassion, but if you continue to disrupt our experiments, then it is likely you will find your destiny. We shall, however, allow one more communication with you so that you may ask your profound questions. We shall answer as you wish. If in terms of physics, then it shall be so. But remember that our limits are set by your own abilities and not ours. There is no one after the man you call Lucas. The chance factor will not reoccur again in a time span your kind can relate to. So that's kind of a strange message. It's an experiment, but also, what does he mean by your kind? Is he like a different race that's co-inhabiting the planet with people in 2109? Is that I don't know. What do you guys think of that one?
Well, I remember reading a different message where they describe themselves almost as beings of energy or light, but that doesn't necessarily imply they weren't at one point human, but maybe there's just such a great distinction between what they are now, versus what are we talking about, 1980s, right?
Yeah.
Just a big difference. Although, 2109 does not seem that far off.
No, it does not. We were just talking about this the other day because we've been watching a couple of older sci-fi movies, and it's funny because in the 80s, a lot of the sci-fi movies in the 80s, they would be like 1995. The world is set on fire and robots have taken over. You're like, dude, that's like 10 years. Like in the 80s, they would make these predictions, be like, okay, in 20 years, people are going to be like, have flying cars and all this crazy stuff. And I guess there was like this really unbridled optimism as far as what technology was going to do in the near future, and how it was going to change the lives of average people. So I think that because in the 80s, they were coming out with all kinds of new stuff all the time, like all these gadgets and, these new things that coming out like compact discs and, new media players, like going from, 8 tracks to cassettes to CDs, or, they had like the old Betamax versus VHS kind of a deal. And they're coming out with these really high tech, I hate to say it, it sounds ridiculous, but these really high tech VHS player type deals that, things were changing fast back then, they still are today, but it just seemed a little different back then.
Well, I remember when like Blu-ray came out, and everybody was like, oh, it's so much better. Look at it. It's so much better. And now like that's something that's just like, all right, whatever, it's not impressive at all in any way, shape, or form.
No,
I
but
remember the days
you always
when,
want to get your movie on Blu-ray. You're always like, oh, which one should
sure,
I get? Gotta
yeah.
get it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but like I remember the days when like you'd have like I would go down to the warehouse. You remember that, Age Anderson
Oh,
down
wow.
there at the shopping center.
Yeah.
And like I would go down there and like I would because like I've always been into music and stuff, right? So I'd buy these cassette tapes that said like they're like the same quality as like CDs, because a CD was like still at the time a new thing, and like if you can get music on CDs like that was like the highest quality, right? But like I would sit there like with a radio, like I'd be listening to like my favorite radio station or something, and like when they'd say like a song would come on, I'd make like mixtapes, I'd wait for a song to come on and be like, oh, here it comes, I better hit record at the right time, here it goes, bam, hit it, I'm recording,
Yeah.
and like it's back then that was like I guess like the early days of I guess you could say pirating music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
Everybody did it. Everybody just sort of recorded tapes, or if your friend had an album you wanted, you would just borrow their tape and just sort of dub it onto a blank tape,
I remember those
Yeah,
double radios where you put the tape in. You had two places to put the cassette tapes.
Right. So you can make
You
copies.
make
Yeah.
copies.
Everybody did
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about
That's
that.
exactly what I was doing it on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't really think much of it. It just sort of, everybody just sort of did it. But nowadays you wouldn't steal candy from a baby, would ya? Kind of a thing. It's become
Yeah, I
very
would.
evil.
I'd slap that baby right in the damn face. Give me that candy, bitch.
What kind of candy?
Butterfingers?
Yeah, Butterfingers.
Oh, I would do it for a Butterfinger. Maybe not for a lollipop because that's kind of disgusting. But if I saw like an unopened like a Butterfinger or like a package in that kid's hand, I'd be like, whack, give me that shit. No, I'm joking.
And
Actually, I
on
wouldn't do that.
That's going in the description. On this episode, Ethan says how he would steal candy from a baby. No, just kidding. But I'm leaving that in though because it's funny. But yeah, so it was, I don't know, it was interesting times at the very least. But yeah, I remember that the warehouse music, that place, it turned into something else. I don't know, Blockbuster maybe, who knows? But
not at that shopping center. Maybe I know that like Warehouse went away way before Blockbuster did.
yeah.
From what I remember, but I don't know what the reason for that is.
Well, I think they opened up a Blockbuster and I think a Hollywood Video that sort of killed their business maybe. I don't know. But I remember the last time I went there, I rented a VHS tape to watch it. And I brought it home and it wouldn't play, like it was all messed up, So I brought it back. Now
Yeah.
this is literally like a 10, 15 minute span of time, right? So we're talking about I didn't have time to watch the whole movie. Like you would have barely had time to rewind the movie and that, So I go back and I'm like, hey, this movie doesn't work. And the person behind the counter is like looking at me like I'm trying to pull a fast one. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work. Could I just get a different copy of the same movie? And the guy was like treating me like, well, I don't know, blah. Like, no, dude, I'm not trying to like get a free rental here. I want the exact same movie, different copy. And he's like, oh, you got to clean your machine and stuff. I'm like, it's not my machine. I just watched a movie yesterday. It was fine. And eventually I talked him into it, but like he's trying to bust my chops, right? I'm like, what the hell is this? Oh wait, actually that was the last time. The last time I went, they were advertising 2 evening rentals, right? So I rented a movie, I kept it 2 nights and I returned it the next day and they charged me for 2 rentals. I'm like, what the hell? They're like, yeah, you keep it for 2 evenings. The evening you rent it and the evening you return it. I'm like, I told them, I'm like, all right, you can charge me for this extra rental, but I'm never coming back. And of course they charged me and I never came back. So they had some strange business practices there. And I think that might be part of the reason why they went under. Although, it probably would have been inevitable at some point with all the streaming and stuff. But hey, there's still a Blockbuster, I guess.
No, it closed.
The last Blockbuster
I'm
closed.
pretty sure it closed.
Isn't Oregon or something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think I heard on the news.
Yeah. But yeah, the warehouse definitely, at least that location definitely accelerated the process with some of their shady practices. And they didn't treat customers as valued customers. They treated you as like, what are you doing here? Why are you spending money here? Go away, kind of a thing. It's like, no, I'm a customer. I want to spend money here. Let me spend money here, and I will. But they didn't want you to, apparently. So yeah. Anyways, wow, that was quite a diversion there on warehouse video.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, no, I remember what I was going to say too. Actually, I think tapes are potentially better quality than CDs. Believe it or not. That's why even when they had CDs, a lot of the recording studios would record on to tape. But the difference is that tape is not nearly as durable and it degrades more easily. Because what a tape is it's basically you have like a bunch of tiny pieces of metal that I guess record the sound on there. And anything like, say, magnets or whatever, it just sort of deteriorates over time anyways. So they don't last as long as CDs. CDs can also deteriorate over time. That is possible, but tapes are just they're more likely to do so. So they're potentially, like you're saying, they're advertised as being as good as CD quality. They might have actually technically been better quality. They just don't tend to last as long. I just wanted to throw that out there. But all right, so let's see. What was I going to? Okay, I read that. All right. So next up, I have in my notes, 2109 tells them that the poltergeist activities are a result of Ken's actions and that they shouldn't talk to Lucas for a while. And that was sort of a strange thing. So I guess there's some stuff going on where it seemed like 2109 was editing the messages between Ken and Lucas. So there was some sort of interference going on there. And what that poltergeist activity is or how it was interfering, we don't really know. But there's a lot of stuff about like how the communication worked and how it might have been interfered with and stuff. I didn't take notes on all that stuff because it gets pretty bogged down on something that may or may not be all that important in the grand scheme of things. But let's see. So we talked about Debbie's visions and her dreams. So eventually Lucas reveals that his name is actually an alias and his real name was Thomas Harden. And that was sort of like a strange revelation and a strange thing in the case. Why would he operate under a pseudonym, right? He's speaking to them from the past. I don't know. It's sort of a strange thing. Did you have anything on that as to why that would be? Either agents?
No, I found that pretty weird. But at the same time, I don't know, it might have all seemed like witchcraft to him. And he's, very reluctant to give any information. But then he was giving all the information about where he lived. And, it's just so confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the college he went to, which I believe they did some research to try to find out if they could find some records, but they never did under that name because obviously it wasn't the correct name.
Yeah. But if that was an alias, then Thomas Harden could have been an alias as well, right?
What's in a name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ether, could you talk into the mic, please?
What do you want me to?
It should be like maybe 2 inches from your face.
Yours is like 6 inches.
Is not.
Is 2.
Look at that. It's like that. It's like 2 inches. Because when we're doing the recording, when I do the editing, you're very quiet. So you were closer to the mic earlier, so it makes it a lot harder to level your volumes throughout the whole track. And some of the tools I use to like remove noise and stuff might detect the lower level stuff as noise and remove it. So it makes the editing quite a lot more difficult. So
is this better?
That is much better. Thank you. So if you just talk into the mic, be very close to it, and then it makes it so much easier to get the edits done. I appreciate it. All right. So on to the next little bit here that we have. So 2109 seems pretty unhappy that they learned the real name of Lucas or Thomas or, whatever you want to say it. And he sends a message and he says, "At present, you have 2 Lucases running around your house. If at any time the 2 are to meet, we cannot explain the devastation that will erupt within the time continuum. We must stop communication with Lucas 1, but we cannot interfere with the other. You must help be giving us every word uttered by Thomas Hardwine from the second you received his true name. You must also state how much information you have on this man. Everything, word for word. Avoid any other communication you may have with him. Desperation, be quick." So that's a little, a little different, right? A little different tone.
More forceful.
Yeah, and there's There's two of the guys. What does that mean? Is it like a split in the timeline?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is the point where they start to lose me too. Or maybe a little before this, I don't know.
Well, because if they have control and they're these otherworldly beings or advanced beings and they brought back a computer, but they can't control the timeline now and there's two of them, I'm not following. But maybe it's because I'm not advanced enough.
Right, yeah, you're just not smart enough to understand. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, come on. I guess I'm not smart enough either because I have no idea what any of this means. Right? So there's some other shenanigans that go on. Like they, instead of using the computer, they try to use paper to communicate with the past so that they can sort of get around the 2109 fella. And, so they have a Thomas or, what's his name? The guy with the alias writing with charcoal on paper to try to communicate with him. And I suppose that sort of worked a little bit.
Yeah, from what I understand, it started off a little vague. Like he wasn't very good at it, but like they described it like as time went on, he got better at it, I guess. Like, and they were able to receive more pronounced messages from him. The writing got better.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a letter, like an image of an actual letter with his signature. Am I remembering wrong?
No, probably not. I did not see that letter, but I'm sure you did. So let's see. What do I have here? So at some point they asked 2109 if there's any way to get rid of the poltergeist so they can communicate with the past again. And 2109 says, yes, we shall hold back as best we can on the PG. Sorry you find us so friendly. Ask the man David what he thinks of conjectural tachyons and what are his theories of causality. What answer does he have for its paradox? Cheers, 2109. So they actually did have a friend named David who was a teacher and knew something of tachyons. Would you like to explain to us what tachyons are, Agent Ether?
I don't know.
So my understanding is that tachyons are a theoretical particle that can like travel backwards in time or something. They don't really exist. It's just sort of like a theoretical kind of a deal, like a what if. But I'm not a physicist and I don't really know anything about it, but I just remember reading that at some point in the past. So I don't know. How about you, Agent ETA? Do you know what tachyons are?
Nope. Nope. No, I'm not smart enough to even tackle that kind of subject, I mean, I've looked into like people giving lectures about like string theory and stuff like that, and like the whole time I was just like, what? What the hell's going on? Like, yeah, it's a little above my brain grade, I guess you could say. I'm interested in it, but it goes right over my head.
I think I played a game that had like a tachyon cannon or tachyon gun or something. I forget what, some video game. Maybe maybe Wing Commander or something. That's going back a ways. Yeah, I think it might have been Wing Commander. Maybe Wing Commander Privateer that had a tachyon gun or something.
Was that the Wing Commander with Mark Hamill?
No, it was a different one. But that one was pretty good. Hobbs!
Yeah. That was the one I played the most.
Yeah. That game was fun, but it also had its problems. But Wing Commander 4, now that thing was a dumpster fire. We won't get into that one. I was like, what the hell? But anyways, so I just wanted to, Byron actually said something in the chat here of Byron on Discord said, the warehouse, we have that in New Zealand, I think. Depends if you're talking about the same thing. Maybe the company still exists over there in New Zealand. That'd be pretty cool, right? Oh, and he has a link here. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Let's check the link. Hopefully it's not going to hack my computer. What is this?
Virus. Don't
Pop-ups. Oh no, my phone is done now. Let's see. The logo is different, and there looks like they sell mostly electronics and stuff. But I mean, that's not necessarily unusual to have a different logo. That happens all the time. They may even rebrand stores, like I think in the East, Ralph's is Raleigh's, right? For the grocery stores. Yeah. It's similar logo, different name kind of a thing. So, I mean, this, it's hard for me to tell. I'd have to Google it and do some research. But I mean, it's entirely possible it could be the same company that's still around and they've transitioned less from rentals and CDs, more to like just general electronics and maybe a department store or whatever. It looks like it's a department store. But man, that'd be interesting if that was still the same company.
Like I remember, like when I was a kid, like in middle school, I would save up my like any money I could get, lunch money or whatever it is, you know. And like me, and my one of my best friends, we would this guy Jonathan, we'd save up our money and then we'd go rent like video games for like Nintendo 64. You know, it was like I think that was a console we were using at the time.
Yeah,
and yeah, on the weekends, you know. Or on the, you know, during summertime or whatever, like that was our main goal, was like, let's like get some money together, let's go rent some games, because like we weren't like, you know, too keen on, because a lot of those games back then you could rent it like for a couple days and beat the game, you know what I mean, if you spent all day every day on it, you know, like, which we did because we were nerds, you know. But like yeah, I remember like even like games like the original like Duke Nukem and stuff like that. Like I remember like renting that game and we had all sorts of fun. Like yeah, and then like there was other games like GoldenEye that we had to buy. You know what I mean?
Oh, GoldenEye was the shit.
Like, yeah, that's one of those games where like it had so much. You could replay it so much that like we're like, yeah, we got to get this one. You know? Yeah. I remember even like I've talked to you about this, AJ Anderson. Like there was like, you know, all the neighborhood kids, like we'd get together and like we'd like bet on it, like on like different rounds and stuff. Like we bet like quarters or dimes even or whatever, you know, like whatever money we could get, you know, like I bet you 50 cents I could beat you in this next round, you know?
Yeah. So I remember I thought I was pretty decent at that game because we played it a lot. And one time ETA he usually played it at his friend's house, I think. They weren't always at our house. But I remember one time I was like, child, like, oh, you think you're good? Okay, let's go. I'm like, because I think, okay, I'll kick your ass. You know, let's do it. So we're playing, and he's like, headshot, bink. I'm like, what the fuck? Headshot, bink. Look at dude. I didn't even land a single bullet on him. Like he just kept killing me from like across the fucking map. I'm like, how are you? It's like half a pixel. How are you getting that headshot? It was ridiculous. It was crazy. So
because like. We sat there and we played the game so much, like we broke the game. You know what I mean?
It's like
we found out everything about the game.
It was not even close, dude. Like it was not even competitive. It was, I thought I was good at the game until I played ETA. Then I was like, all right, I give up. I retire from this game. It was funny. Hilarious.
Hey man, there's levels to this shit. You know what I mean?
There are indeed. But hey, I'll beat you at Super Smash Brothers Melee though. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you might. Maybe I played that game once or twice.
Oh, so, I would definitely
probably.
Beat you then. Yeah. Not that I'm great at that game or anything. It is a fun game, but I've played a couple from the series, and that one by far, in my opinion, is the best. There's just something about the balance and how, you know, the character's strengths and weaknesses and stuff that I think it just plays really well. It plays better than the other ones. But all right, well, let's get back to the show.
yeah, we should probably do that.
Yeah, we could wrap it up fairly soon here. So let's see. We're just talking about that. Ken knows David that knows a little bit about Tachyon. So that was in the message. All right, so they did get a few outside entities or peoples to investigate the case, like a UFO group, and the one that I took notes on was the Society for Psychical Research. And
SPR.
Yeah, that particular group thought that the house might be bugged, and they suspected the whole thing was a hoax of one kind or other. You know, despite the fact that it looked really good, because the messages only appeared when they were out of the house. And sometimes I guess Debbie was home once or twice, but usually they were outside of the house. And Ken was definitely out of the house when all the messages were typed. And like I said, with this type of computer, it would not be really that possible, I guess, to have the message just pop up. You'd have to actually have somebody at the keyboard physically typing it. Now, that's what I don't know a whole lot about computers, and that's what I found when I was looking at the model of computer. But anything's possible. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the capabilities of this thing, and maybe it would be possible, but
I don't think so. I actually stumbled across a Reddit post about this topic.
2 inches aging ether.
I actually stumbled across a Reddit post about this specific thing, and someone who replied seemed to know a lot about computers, specifically this model. And he said, he could not see any way around it being a hoax because of the way the computer worked and the ability to have something, boot up like that.
Yeah. I did copy paste a message from Reddit where somebody talks about it. Maybe I'll do that at the end. But they talk about the capabilities of the computer and a possibility and stuff. I'm not sure what half the words mean, but I'll go ahead and read it anyways. But yeah, so that a psychic research group thought that it was a hoax. So I thought that was interesting. And we could do maybe half an episode on just their investigation, but I'll just summarize it by saying they were not convinced.
They kind of dropped it.
Yeah. But I guess they had like publications and stuff, but this case, it's hard to find the volume that this case was in, I guess. I don't know. It's not online anywhere that I could find it.
For this specific society?
Yeah.
That's because they dropped the case.
Yeah, but apparently they published it in one of their periodicals.
Oh, okay. All right.
They published something about it.
I actually watched in the lead up to this episode here, I watched I think it was like about 44 minutes or something like that. It was a YouTuber that his name was, I think it was Nostalgia Nerd. And this isn't the type of like topic, and shout out to that guy. He did a good job. So this guy isn't like into like ghosts or, UFOs or anything like this. He's actually like he specializes in like nostalgic like technology and stuff, like old computers and stuff. And this isn't the kind of like the normal type of video that he usually makes. But he did do like this. The guy seemed to be very well informed and knew what the heck he was talking about when describing like this computer and its capabilities. So he described that like like it doesn't seem like this computer would have those capabilities. You know what I mean? Like it just he went into pretty good detail about it, which I'm not smart enough to really regurgitate. But yeah, I was impressed by his description of what the computer was capable of, and he didn't seem to think that what this. Some of the things that he had heard about the story, he didn't think like the computer was capable of doing this, like unless online or something like that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But even in that case, he was like pretty skeptical about it.
Yeah. All right. So, and I guess there was a last message where Thomas said that he's being forced to leave his home because the locals were going full Frankenstein on him and like threatening to burn his shit down and stuff. So he said, "This is going to be my last message." And like I said, there was details about the communication. Like I guess he couldn't really move his light box very far or would like lose connection or something. He had to keep it in the same place in his house. But so I guess this is his last message. Said, "One day you will all sit down at my table for wine and meat by the river in Oxford, where we shall read each other's books and laugh, and we shall speak of truth and good men, watching Oxford change together for evermore. In your time my book is old, but I shall not go to my God until it is written. Then we will all be truly embraced. My love to you all. I shall await you in Oxford. Thomas Harden." And apparently there's a book that Thomas wrote in Latin and hid in a safe place. That was according to 2109, sent a message saying that. The book, of course, has never been found, but I mean, that'd be cool if it was, right?
Yeah.
What if it was, man? That would validate the entire story as long as the book was verified as having been written in that time period. And obviously you could do that with, the type of paper that the book was made of. There would be an investigation into the authenticity of this book.
Or maybe it was found.
Dun, dun, dun. Where's my hamster gif there or whatever?
Oh yeah, I love that hamster gif. The one where you're like, the hamster's back is turned towards you, and then he just like turns his head like with wide eyes.
Yeah,
right.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I love that one. That's one of the really early gifs, I think. Right.
It's been around a while. Yeah, it definitely has.
Yeah.
So I saw this at some point. Ken asked 2109 about UFOs, and I was like, yeah, now we're talking. Here we go. and 2109 said, time, UFOs, and most other types of the paranormal are in some way all connected. In certain geographical locations, there is what we call areas of convectual magnetism. These can be explained by the magnetic lines that run around the Earth. Imagine, if you will, circles running around the Earth clockwise. These are positive lines of magnetic force, and also circles running anti-clockwise. Negative. When two opposite running lines are crossed, usually a permanent crossing rather than random, the light-time continuum is vastly distorted so much that a sensitive individual may witness what you may call a timescape. That is, a glimpse of a past event or that of a future event. We hear you say, but you said matter could not travel in time. This is true as if matter were to travel by physical motion, then the mass around the moving object would be so dense that the Earth and most other celestial bodies in your solar system would be consumed or imbalanced in such a way that they would decay rapidly. Then how? Imagine again, please, a person from the future happily floating along in his silver spaceship crossing an area of convectual magnetism. All of a sudden, his instrument panel goes shaky. He may feel slightly dizzy or nauseous. A green mist caused by atmospheric distortion forms around the vessel. He then will probably fall into a trance state of such depths that his soul is squeezed through the light-time gate and forced to project a physical mirror image of him or herself as, then there's a missing word, as of their place, time, origin, and their immediate vicinity. This can occur sometimes for only several seconds and does only register for that individual's subconscious, but onlookers from the time which is broken into will witness the very physical sight and actions of this alien from another time, then totally by confusion elaborate on the facts. So I thought that was sort of an interesting little take on it, you know?
What?
Yeah, right. Well, what he's saying is that, well, at least the way I'm taking that is that it's not possible to physically travel through time and space, right? But basically your spirit, like an astral projection, let's say, can travel to another space and people will see that and see it as something like a ghost or a UFO or an alien. It's not. It's just somebody who's accidentally sort of slipped through time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's worded so oddly.
It is kind of strange how they wrote it. Yeah. So here's that quote I have from Reddit about somebody talking about the technical possibilities of the computer, the BBC Micro, from Deleted. The username is deleted because I guess they deleted their account at some point. A technically advanced possibility is that the BBC Micro came with a facility called Sideways ROM, in which the factory-supplied operating system, BBC Basic, could be replaced with another operating system or even a program stored on a removable chip which could be booted from. A prankster could have opened the case, put a Sideways ROM into the machine, and set it to boot from it. All that the very simple program on the Sideways ROM would have to do would be to pop up a random quote on the screen before switching back to the factory ROM, and that was a known function elsewhere. Fortune cookies, a configuration option on Unix or Linux where immediately a terminal opens, a random quote shows, had been around for some time. This method would only have been comprehensible to someone who knew the machine's capabilities in detail. I remember writing assembly language using a development environment on a Sideways ROM. This was actually better than what is available today because the machine, if it locked up, rebooted instantly into that environment. There was no lengthy wait for the operating system to boot, then the development environment to start. The DE was also blazingly fast. So that's an interesting idea. So they're saying that you could have a secondary chip in there that would you could boot it into a secondary. You could hoax it using that. But the problem, again, with this idea is these computers did not have any sort of onboard clock. So you wouldn't really be able, I don't see how you could time that to be, only when Ken was out of the house or something. So, I mean, it's an interesting idea, but I don't think that completely solves how it was done. I feel like you would still need somebody to physically make it happen on the machine, physically boot from there or something, right?
Yeah.
I feel like somebody would have to be there, like present. But at the same time, I'm not buying this voice from the past and voice from the future. I almost feel like if it was one or the other,
right,
I would be more inclined to believe it.
Yeah, I think it would be a much better story if it was only a voice from the past, you know? That would be like a way better story. But I guess that leads us to our final thoughts on the case. Who wants to go first? Agent Ether?
Yeah, it certainly was interesting to read about. Never heard of it before. And I'm a big fan of time travel stories. So that made it a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a fun story. How about you, Agent ETA?
Well, I kind of lean on the side of it being a potential hoax, to be honest. Like, I love the story. It's very, very enjoyable to learn about this. And I was aware of the story a while ago. I don't know when I originally first heard about it, but I mean, there's a couple things, and this could be, fact or potential, fiction, but I do remember, so there's this doctor from Cambridge University that analyzed like some samples of the writing and stuff and some of the messages. Her name was Dr. Laura Wright, and she was an expert, on that language from that time period where Thomas Warden was supposed to be from, or Lucas Wayman, whatever you want to call him. And she said that like it looks like it's not even close to like what the speak of that era was, how it was formulated or what have you. You know what I mean?
She said there was a lot of discrepancies, like I doth versus I dust, and she was saying it would only be one or the other, and she was also saying just like the syntax was off.
Mm-hmm.
Was more,
so I mean, that does kind of convince me that this is like, I mean, it makes me lean towards the side of the fence where it's possibly a hoax, but also at the same time, I had a thought where I was like, well, I mean, this is this is a professor at a prestigious university. Even if she did think it was real, she probably wouldn't say that it's real because she doesn't want to be looked at like a loon or something like that. She doesn't want any kind of like a negative stuff coming her way. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if she was just like, nope, it's all fake. I'm not going to support this. So, but for the most part, like I find it a very compelling story, and I think it's very interesting. There's no doubt about that, but there's too many discrepancies, and there's too many red flags for me, at least. Like I'm not willing to, even though I want to believe it, but I don't think it's real because there's too many like questions, like they definitely could have just themselves like typed out these messages, and they were academics as well, right? So that they're decently well educated. They could have forged this stuff, I guess you could say. And I don't know, there's too much open area right there for me. You know what I mean? Too much room for shenanigans to have been involved,
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm standing at. I mean, for example, pretty much the only source of information we have for this whole thing is actually a book that Ken wrote about the whole experience. Right. That's where we get all our information.
Yeah.
We don't have a ton of witnesses coming forward and saying, oh yeah, I was there. Ken left the house. I was standing by the front door the whole time. He came back and then the message was there out of nowhere. We don't have corroborating witnesses like that. We only have Ken. And if him and his girlfriend and the person who's renting a room from them or whatever, if they're all very close friends, they could corroborate on this stuff very easily. Like I think this would be incredibly easy for them to hoax if they wanted to, like,
yeah. And every single one of the messages that they got, even the ones that they left out, like, paper for the guy for Lucas or Thomas, whatever you want to call him, for him to write on, it all happened when they were gone. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so they left they went to the pub and had some meals and some beers or what have you, and it happened while they were all gone, which seems a bit convenient to me.
Well, and I didn't see too many, or I didn't see any witness testimonies where it's like, oh yeah, I came back to his house from the pub and I saw the message on the screen. But even if that was the case, they could have just typed it before they left. They would have to be there before and after. And you would have to have somebody observing the room to make sure that nobody actually got into the room to type onto the computer. It's just, I don't know. It would be very easy to hoax this, I think, as an inside job. Now, if you're taking the perspective of somebody else putting those messages on the computer, while Ken was away, then that would be a lot more difficult to hoax. Still not impossible, just, breaking in, I guess, for 2 years.
Yeah.
Just creeping around the house every time Ken leaves, you just break in and put something on his computer. That's kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, it seems to me, so my take on this is that, yeah, it's a really fun story. I really enjoyed this one, but I don't think it's real. I don't think it really happened. I think what this is this is sort of like the first like viral marketing attempt that I'm aware of, right? Where this guy basically writes a book and uses this story it's a science fiction book, but he's treating it as if it's a real thing to sort of market the book that he's going to write about it. You know what I mean? So that's what I think. I think he did this whole thing just to write a book and to sell copies of the book. I think I said,
it's possible.
It's possible, fascinating story, and I really had a lot of fun with it. But I don't believe it, not for a second.
Yeah, he did. I think the book was published like 3 years after the events had stopped. What have you?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's that's a sizable amount of time, but they still could have been trying to make some money off of it because they were just, he was still pushing the story and stuff,
Yeah.
Obviously he was trying to get the book published. So
yeah. Oh, I also wanted to mention before we get going here, I wanted to mention that this topic was actually originally requested by Degenerate on Discord. So thanks for the suggestion, Degenerate. We really enjoyed this one. I'm looking it up here, and the book is 358 pages. So, that would take a little bit of time to write. Maybe not 3 years. I don't know, but so it's not a short book. But speaking of books,
It's you and books. It's always books.
what? Well, there's a book for this case.
That's true. There is a book for this.
Case is literally pretty much based on this book. So, anyways,
You're like, no.
no, I was saying, no, I'm hitting the flag for the Patreon subscribers so I can cut out the advertisements for them.
Shout out to our live audience.
All right. Our live audience. Oh, most of the people are saying in the chat, they're like, oh yeah, we have to, it's late. We got to dip out. So peace out. So peace out to all those people who had to dip out early. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you so much. And also thanks for our live audience who is still here. We got Pimp Simpins, Aussie Meemaw, and Murphy. Thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate you showing up for the show. It makes it a lot more interesting to have an actual live audience. Really appreciate you being here.
And keep it
hell
strange.
yeah.